With the lack of rain throughout the state, you might want to keep an eye on the tree around your home. Bergeron Tree Service of Winslow is warning homeowners they've been getting several calls for silver maple trees failing, which they say could be due to the dry conditions. They say trees with unions, when two branches come together, can become weaker throughout periods of drought. They say to keep a lookout for any kind of tree near your house with dry leaves or cracks that are opening, especially those with multiple stems.
If we can get to a tree before it fails, of course, we're trying to maintain them and really reduce weight, is typically the approach we'll take with pruning, because that is, physically the best thing you can do to prevent branch failure and stem failure is literally lightening up the tree so it's not as heavy. And as long as it's done in a sound scientific way, it doesn't, hurt the health of the tree at all. We've seen some pretty destructive stuff in the past few years with storms and really in these conditions now, which isn't storms.
Bergeron says it's always cheaper to maintain a tree than have to deal with the consequences of it falling. More information about their services can be found on our website.